Welcome back, everyone. I am so excited for today's interview. We have not only one amazing author, but two. They have collaborated and recently published on the pen name M.A. Carrick. We are talking to the one and only Marie, Brennan, and Alyc Helms. How are you today?
Doing good.
Doing pretty good. It's Halloween for us. It's
Yeah.
not for you.
Yes, because we
Yeah.
have Halloween. It's Monday morning here now. We had
Yeah.
Halloween yesterday. So have you had many trick-or-treaters?
It's still early. We're at 4 p.m. here, so things haven't quite gotten rolling where we are. But if you hear doorbell noises in the middle of this interview, that is going to be children coming by to demand their candy.
Yes, which Mr. Marie Brennan is responsible for, so we won't
Yeah.
have to like wander away and do that. But yeah.
Love that. Well, I want to get straight into it. I would love to hear how you both started writing. What got you into this industry?
I mean, it's one of those things for me, at least. And I think this is actually true for a lot of people that, I didn't so much start writing, I was always doing it because kids make up stories, right? Most kids at some point make up stories. And the only difference for me is that I kind of never stopped. I decided when I was like 9 or 10 that I wanted to be a writer, and I wasn't what I would call like disciplined or organized about it through junior high school. But when I got to college and I finally had a regular writers group for the first time in my life, that was when I got serious about it. Basically was, my freshman year of college. And so I was actually writing novels all through college, a couple of which are now published. And yeah, onward into graduate school and ended up leaving grad school to write full time. But for me, it was just kind of an ongoing, this is what I decided and I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah, and it's funny because for me, yeah, similarly, I was always a reader, always making up stories. I think I wrote my first book as one of those like little projects that kids are assigned to do in classrooms, and it's little typewritten stories with like illustrations. There's like a little folk tale, and there's an original story, and there's one that I'm pretty certain is just like a completely plagiarized version of The Fuzzies, which is a famous children's book. I just like wrote down the story, but it kind of went off on my own little world tangent, and like family folklore and a couple of poems. So I was very like, diverse interest as a writer as a 9-year-old kid. But yeah, then kind of like noodled around with it and like told stories and everything like that. But I have to admit that I didn't actually make the connection between I like writing and I could write books and be a published writer until I met Marie, because it's like, there were books and they happened and you read them and there were these like, gods of the universe that were writers that somehow produced them, but I'd never actually witnessed or kind of thought about what was the process to write a book until the summer we met, which was an archaeological field school in Wales and Ireland. And at night in the fines tent, Marie, who was incredibly disciplined in a way that I was not, would sit down and she would work. She would like hammer out her however many word goal that you had for the night of Doppelganger, which ended up being your first published novel.
Yeah.
And just being able to see like somebody who I regarded as a peer who like was at like a level that I kind of thought myself at doing that, and kind of getting to see the guts of the process, I was like, oh, that's how you do it. And that's actually kind of when I started like figuring out my own process and kind of what way worked for me. But that was really the thing that spurred me on to this was a thing that normal people could do.
Yeah.
Which, yeah.
I mean, normal people don't drag their laptop to a field in BFE nowhere, Wales. Like anybody who knows Wales, we were near Newport. Nope, not the Newport you're thinking of, the Newport that had a grand total of 3 pubs. The reason I was writing my novel in the fines tent was because that was the one place with electricity.
Yes. Yes, we were in tents on a hill and it rained pretty much the entire time.
Yeah.
Except when we were in Ireland, which was sunny and gorgeous.
Yes.
Then I'm very curious as to when you decided to start writing together. When did that become an idea bubble and how did you start co-writing together?
By accident.
Yeah. We kind of fell backward into it, really.
Yeah. So we have trotted this story out a number of times that Alyssa's running a tabletop role-playing game that I'm playing in. And at one point, there was a thing that we wanted to do, which was very much a side plot that wasn't going to involve the other player characters and was the kind of thing that wouldn't work as well to be run as a game thing anyway, because it was sort of a heist caper thing. So we said, hey, what if we tried to write it as like a scene. What if we wrote it together? Because, we're both fiction writers. Let's do this. So we opened up a Google Doc and started swapping back and forth as we wrote it, because I was writing my character and Alyc was writing all the other characters. And we've got a chat window open where we're coordinating of, okay, well, what if we head in this direction with it? Cool. Yeah. And we wrote that and it was a lot of fun. And we said, we should do that again. So we did, and we wrote some more scenes for the game. And then at one point I counted them up and we had written about 50,000 words of fiction for the game. And at that point we
were like, we should write something together, because this is like fun, and we've got like a good process going on. And we made like a whole list of all the different like tropes that we like and things that we like to in fiction and everything like that. It took us a ridiculously long amount of time to realize that we should write the thing we were already writing.
Yeah, that we should take that 50,000 words and file off the few bits that had any real connection to the game.
Yeah,
build some other stuff up around it to make a world and a plot that could go with this. I joked for a while that we had invented the invertebrate novel, because what we had was these really good meaty interactions between some of the characters and like the arc of how those relationships changed over time. But there wasn't a spine. We're like, we need a plot to put all of these interactions in. So yeah, we had to find a spine for our novel and figure out how to basically come up with a framework that would allow us to still have like that arc of character relationship that we wanted, but with new justifications for why things happened and like new events to make it go.
Yeah.
Because the Mask of Mirrors is phenomenal. That cover is stunning. Love that cover so much.
Beautiful cover, yeah.
It's so nice. And you have so many raving reviews about it as well. And it's quite a unique tone as well. And I can tell, I have not yet read it, and I'm going to, because I'm so excited to get into it. Can you tell us, for those who are listening and who haven't yet read it, but will be reading it with me, what is it about?
I always make Alyc do the elevator pitch.
You do, but I wasn't ready for it.
You've been thrown in the deep end.
I haven't practiced it. Edit this part out. So The Mask of Mirrors is the story of Renata, also known as Renzelenskaya, also known as Alta Renata Vraudux, and a couple other names that she gathers along the way, who's a con artist who tries to infiltrate her way into this noble family in order to kind of secure a future for herself and her sister, and ends up running afoul of this masked vigilante, this hooded vigilante, the Rook, whose entire purpose is to oppose the nobility. And so capers and banter and like all sorts of hijinks and shenanigans and identity shenanigans ensue as she kind of navigates the noble world, and then also her kind of con and the relationship she's building with this mysterious vigilante figure. That's the basic of it.
That's amazing. I'm so excited, because I do love a good con artist arc. I do love an anti-hero. I love thieves, like all of that good stuff. So how did you actually find co-writing? What were sort of the learning curves for you guys to sort of be able to interact and write that way?
I think, like Marie was saying, we had the game, the way that we had been writing scenes for the game, as our template to kind of flow into working on this. And so a lot of it just came out of that. We write together in a shared Google Doc, and we go back and forth really at the line, the sentence, the paragraph level. Like, we don't usually go more than a few paragraphs without swapping back and forth. And I think one of the things is actually lets us do really well, and a thing that a lot of our readers have commented on, is that it doesn't feel like it's something written by two people. It feels very integrated. It feels very streamlined. It like, if you didn't know there were two authors, I don't think anybody would be able to guess that there were two authors.
We've definitely had people comment on that.
Yeah. And I think that also comes down to just, we've been friends for 20 years. We have a similar background in like folklore and anthropology. We have, been gaming together for 20 years. And so we've got this kind of improvisational character kind of driven relationship as well. And all of that kind of helped us navigate our particular style. I think for other people collaborating, they can approach it a variety of different ways. And I think they're all valid if that works for you. But yeah, for us, it was this very kind of, we are as interwoven in the way that we write and interact and plan this story as the story is itself.
and the story is textile metaphors all
Textile
over the
metaphors
place.
all
So
over,
when
yeah.
we say, we're interwoven, it's like, yeah, that's kind of how the book goes.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would add in for sort of tips, I agree with what Alyc said about the way that we do it. It's not like this is the one true way, because there's many different ways to do collaborative writing. And so, the bigger trick is find the right method that works for you and the person you're collaborating with. And along with that, find the right person to collaborate with. The right person part of it is you've got to be able to both like respect one another's ideas enough and respect your own ideas enough that you can be honest about things, that you can kind of like sometimes one of us will say, okay, well, what if this is how that happens? And the other one's like, I'm not convinced, or it works, but we
But
can
it
do
could be
better.
better.
Yeah, like we spur each other to do better. And so you've got to, number one, be willing to sort of let go of something and not get butthurt that the other person didn't like your shiny idea. And you also need to be willing to say that to the other person and not feel like you've got to hold back for fear of stepping on their feelings. So that there's a big trust dynamic in it, basically. And you've got to find somebody that you can have that honesty with. And then the other thing that I would recommend, and we actually have this posted on our website for anybody who wants to see what we mean. But before we started drafting this book, we actually wrote up a formal agreement of collaboration and we signed it and we got my sister to witness it and everything. And people sometimes are resistant to that kind of thing because they think, oh, but we're friends and I don't want some sort of quasi-legal document getting in the way of our friendship. No, the quasi-legal document is the insurance for your friendship. Yeah. It makes sure that you are both on the same page about what you're agreeing to do, who's going to do what kinds of things are you undertaking. And like one of the things we put in there was a baseline of, okay, we'll try to write this much per week. And if we fall below that line, we need to have a conversation about how this is going. Now, as it turns out, we were conservative. We said, okay, let's aim for 5,000 words a week. And in fact, we averaged more like 12,000 a week because we blitzed writing the first book. It's over 200,000 words long and we wrote it in 4 months. That's absurd.
Yeah.
That wasn't normal. Not everything goes that fast, but in that instance, the whole, if we drop below 5K a week, not a problem, as it turns out. But it is super important to get those things down in black and white so that when there's that moment that you're like, okay, I feel like there's a problem here, but I don't know, should I speak up? Should I not speak up? Having already put down, if this happens, we're going to speak up, means that it takes a lot of that emotional burden off of it. Yeah. So, and if it's like successful, nobody starts going, well, I feel like I did more of the work, so I feel like I deserve more of the money or something, it's like, no, we signed a thing saying 50-50. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I highly recommend making a collaboration agreement ahead of time.
I absolutely love that because it's one so professional at the start. Even though you have 20 years of friendship behind you, I think it's a good idea to very much separate those into two different camps, so to speak, because it can be quite a personal thing. As it is, as an author, you learn to desensitize from people's criticism, let alone if you're writing with somebody, because you might feel personally attacked by it when it's just a suggestion or the way that you can flow better together, especially if you have two very different writing styles separately as authors. So I think that's a brilliant idea. I actually haven't yet heard of any other co-writers doing that, not that I've spoken to, but I think that's fantastic. So then you're published through Orbit. How did you find going, with pitching to agents? Did you already have an agent? How did you find the publishing process?
I mean, it's definitely a little different when there are two people involved. Yeah. One of the questions we had at the outset is, Alyc and I have different agents. So we're like, okay, who's...
And there are different agencies even. Yeah.
And what they ended up deciding to do, they went away and had a conversation between themselves. And they divvied it up where one of them was in charge of pitching it to US publishers. The other one is chasing translation deals and things like that. So they've divided it up in a way that I kind of don't even get how they decided on that, but it works. So
well, I know in some cases, if one of them had a good relationship with a particular publisher, then they're like, I know somebody here who I think might be interested in seeing it, and that kind of a thing.
Yeah. So we did have to kind of work out how that was going to go. And then obviously when it gets to the book production process itself, like, okay, our editor sends us revision notes and such. And generally for those, anything that's big, like we need to write a new scene or significantly rewrite a scene, we work on that together the same way that we did when drafting. Other stuff, Alyc tends to handle more of these sort of initial small edits, like, just kind of cutting down lines and things. And when it comes to copy edits, this I sort of don't recommend, only I also can't do it any other way. They don't give you extra time just because there are two people. You have the same amount of time, which functionally means you have half the amount of time to go through the copy edits.
Yeah.
Alyc will do their pass, and then I do my pass, because neither of us can quite just let it go.
There are like different things we tend to focus on during the
Yeah.
copy edit pass.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that I always do with books and with short stories and with everything I write is one of my final polishing passes is actually reading the entire thing out loud. Because I will find these little tiny places where the rhythm of the sentence could be better, or, oh, I repeated that word, or nope, that adjective doesn't need to be in here, or whatever.
And I think you print it out so that you can see it like in a different medium.
I don't with these books.
Oh, you don't? Oh, okay.
Yeah, normally, so up until very recently, I was still one of the dinosaurs that said, I want you to send me a paper copy edited manuscript. They send me a block of paper because it does not get printed in a space efficient format for that. And they would send me a paper manuscript and I would go through it, make my changes, and then transfer them to my file. That would not work with the timeline for these books. And also just the fact that, like, especially for The Liar's Knot, it's like, we've got a pandemic on, we're not mailing the manuscript around.
Yeah.
And so I do digital copy edits for that one. I don't print it out for that because I just, I have little enough time to get through it as is. But page proofs, actually, that is the one stage where Alyc has been kind enough to take them off my hands. This is after the book has been typeset. At that stage, you're really only looking for outright errors, like, oh, this was supposed to be italicized and it isn't, or the entire line got chopped off somehow. How did that happen?
Yeah.
They don't want you making changes because if you alter things, then it costs money at that point to change it. And the problem is I'm a control freak. And I always find little things that I'm like, okay, well, I give myself a budget of how many little tweaks I can make. You know what? It's easier to just let it go.
Yeah, and I am more resistant to that, so I can just like find the places where I'm like, no, this is really actually a problem, or this is a conflict or something like that, and catch those and save Marie's Virgo-ness for other things. Yeah,
this is the joke I've made many times. I don't believe in astrology, and also, hi, I'm a Virgo.
I'm a Virgo, so I understand that completely.
Yeah.
No, to be fair, Virgos are my favorite people because, like, Marie's a Virgo, her husband's a Virgo, some of my other good friends are Virgos. I think Virgos are amazing. I am not a Virgo.
Yeah, you came up with a joke at one point that I bring the Virgo, you bring the Vargo.
The Vargo.
That being one of the characters of the story who's a fan favorite, let's say.
Yeah, he's pretty well loved.
So how did you then find that the book was received when you released it? How did that feel? And I'd love to know how you celebrated as well.
Celebration was
hard because it came out in January and it was still, quarantining and like we had so many plans. There was this like World Fantasy was happening and it was supposed to come out in November right around World Fantasy, and and it was going to be on Halloween night, was the Saturday night, and we were going to have a big masquerade party, and we bought this like alcohol glitter that we were going to put in drinks so that people could have these like swirly, glittery, shimmery drinks.
There's a drug called
it was going to be like,
so
yeah, we were going to have like this masked kind of, ball room party and everything like that. All of it canceled. None of that we got to do.
Yeah, it was a bit hard to celebrate the book's release. I think we got ourselves a fancy dinner because we had been treating ourselves kind of like, Alyc doesn't actually live you live in a separate city that's just a short distance away, but we've been sort of treating ourselves as members of a household together for quarantine purposes, so we could still at least like get together.
Yeah.
But it was not quite the celebration one might like
that we wanted.
Yeah.
And we did end up because we were scheduled to come out in November of 2020. God, the years are just collapsing together.
Yeah, we were in a pandemic for copy edits for the first book too. Pretend I didn't forget that a moment ago.
But luckily, because we were coming up against the United States election at that time as well, our publisher decided to push us back to January. So
the book was originally supposed to come out a week after the US election. That would have been great.
That's terrible timing.
Yeah, we were very glad to have that delayed.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we had a nice dinner. And I think one of the things when you're a writer is that, you know, by the time your book comes out, you know, you're done with it at least a year in advance, and usually, especially for first book, you know, more because you had the trying to sell it, and you've gone through like copy edits, and you've gone through proofread passes, and you've gone through multiple passes, and like you're probably on to the next book, you know, at this point. It's like that book is so it's kind of one of those things where you have to celebrate all the tiny milestones, because by the time you get to the book coming out, like it feels like, you know, you've been waiting. It's like going over a roller coaster and you're in the first car. So you're like dragging the entire car behind you. It's got that kind of like drag process. So yeah, I think anytime any writer, like, you need to celebrate the small milestones, because the big ones will not feel big, because
even when the book comes out, you know, it's something where it can take people a while to read a book, especially when it's a Chihuahua killer. And I got that term from Mary Robinette Kowal, credit where it's due.
I like that.
But yeah, I mean, the book comes out and it's like, yay, it's out. And we still mostly have to wait now for people to read it, because it's going to take a while, and they don't all start on the day that it came out.
For this next one, The Liar's Knot, we are going to have a little bit of celebration with this, because, you know, it's coming out December 7th, and we're going to be at WorldCon in Washington, D.C. December, like, what is it? 11th, 12th. It's like mid-December.
Very soon after. So WorldCon is well timed for us to go have some kind of actual commemoration of this.
Yeah. So we're excited about that.
Speaking of celebration, Marie, I would love to hear about your, I believe it's History of Dragons.
A Natural History of Dragons.
A Natural History of Dragons, sorry, because that was Hugo Award nominated, which is amazing. And you were up for a fantasy award as well. Can you tell me about when you found out? And surely you celebrated.
I am bad at celebrating things, I will admit. And actually with the Hugos, the Hugo Awards, they email you and say, you've been nominated, don't tell anybody yet. So, because they do a big announcement of the nominations, but you hear about it in advance of that. So I think, like, I had a nice dinner, you know, I called Alyssa and said, hey, I'm nominated, and we had a nice dinner. But again, you don't get like a big celebratory thing. Though I will say, I was lucky enough to be able to go down to an event that was organized in San Jose when the nominations were announced, because they do like a broadcast of it. And so I was there with people when it got announced. And so like that was cool. But the big party for the Hugos, frankly, is the pre-award ceremony. Like you get your little cocktail napkins and then your little hors d'oeuvres and such. And you go to the Hugos Award ceremony. And then afterward, there's a tradition that is the Hugo Losers Party. And it's called the Hugo Losers Party because it is a party thrown for the people who didn't get Hugos. People who did get Hugos are allowed to come, but not until later. And traditionally, you in fact boo them when they walk through the door. George R. R. Martin is the one who's in charge of the Hugo Losers Party these days, so he's footing the bill. George R. R. Martin has a lot of money. I have never been to so fancy a party in my life. Honest to God, chocolate fondue fountain at this party. That was the fancy celebration. World Fantasy did not have all of that stuff, and also World Fantasy doesn't tell you in advance. So as I recall, I had gone to a sort of neighboring shopping center where there was a restaurant. I was going to be picking up dinner for my family. I get out of the car, I glance at my phone, and Twitter tells me, oh, by the way, I'm nominated. And I was like, okay, well, we're having burgers for dinner tonight because that's what I'm here to pick up. I think for both of them, really, the excitement was that, from Alyssa's perspective, I believe I am award ceremony dress-up Barbie.
You are my award ceremony Barbie. It's true. Yeah, I make her go out, and we try on like a bunch of dresses at like, you know, fancy, like, you know, prom bridal fancy dress shops, and like take pictures. And I think you got the red dress for World Fantasy, and you got
Yeah.
the awesome green velvet dress
For the Hugos, yeah.
for the Hugos, and then she got this like cool like dragon art on her arm.
Yeah,
that somebody
Tina
did.
Connolly, another author, does like face painting, body painting kind of stuff. And so in the prep for the Hugo ceremony, because my dress was like a halter top, so I got her to paint a dragon all the way down my arm. Well, and actually,
cool.
specifically what happened was it came up, something about painting came up, and I was like, oh man, if only I'd, thought about it in advance, but I was already at the con. And I was like, yeah, it's probably too late to set something up. And I was saying this to Mary Robinette Cole, who got this look in her eyes. She's like, we will make this happen. And it did.
And then I think I braided your hair. I did.
Yes, yeah, because you can't really see it here, but I have very long hair. Wow, my braid's fuzzy. And so I got Alyc to do a very cool, complex braid for my Hugo outfit, which, that was fun.
We are nothing like Tess and Ren at all, except when we are like Tess and Ren.
Yeah, this is true. And I will admit the fact that Versenians have a whole lot of stuff around hair braiding is one part me having long hair and thinking braids are awesome, and one part Alyssa's been watching a lot of Chinese dramas, like the fantasy type, where they have really cool, interesting hair braids going on.
Now, Alyc, you're also a tech writer. I would love to hear a little bit about that and what kind of pieces you write.
So I work for basically a software platform, business to business. I'm not going to get into the like terminology of it. But yeah, no, I have a real job. I have a day job that basically is the job that supports my writing habit. So I don't yet have the income to be able to write full time. I do think that the technical writing helps kind of the way I structure, like the way I think about structure and everything like that. I think it's one of the things that lets me be the person who goes in for the proofread pass and kind of just do the changes that need to be made and not really, kind of be able to let go of the other things. But yeah, mostly it's the kind of challenge of balancing, having a day job and being able to find writing time. And it's been really interesting because when we were writing The Mask of Mirrors, I was at a previous company and I'd been in my position for a while, and everything was very like, I knew my job really well. I could kind of like coast by on that and then be able to kind of section out the time that we needed to write. I was laid off at the beginning of the pandemic. And so I actually, which, was challenging in some ways, but ended up being a good thing because I ended up being unemployed while we were writing The Liars Not, the second book. And so, I mean, that in some ways it was a really nice summer for me because I got to be.
You chose to kind of take a little while before looking for a job so that we could have that time, really.
Yeah. Because I also knew that onboarding a new job while trying to write a novel, especially a novel of this kind of complexity, was not going to happen.
Some books it might be possible to write them, not these.
Not these. And then I started a new job in January of this year, and we kind of usually treat our writing period as starting in like April, May, and so I'd gotten a little bit of onboarding, but I actually think it's been one of the challenges we've had to deal with, for the third book is, I've got this new job, so I'm not as settled into it, so it's making a lot more kind of mental demands on me than my old job did. And I think also we've got like pandemic burnout and
we both managed to be pretty productive last year. Like actually I was one of the people, I know many authors who kind of couldn't write during especially the early stages of the pandemic from the stress, and I was in the other camp that kind of dove headfirst into fiction to hide from that. So I wrote stupid amounts of stuff last year, and then we get into this year and things are still kind of grinding on, and so we've both been feeling just it's going a little bit slower. Things are not quite as you can't keep your head hidden in the fiction quite as well.
Yeah, and I think also just the challenges of the third book, we want to stick the landing.
Endings are hard.
Endings are really hard. We've got a lot of endings that we've got to jam into this sucker.
Yeah.
And so we've been taking this one more slowly, and as frustrating as I know sometimes that can feel, I feel like it's also going to make a better book in the long term. Yeah.
I think that's the thing too, is you have to shift gears depending on what's happening in your personal life. As you said, Marie, like with the pandemic starting, I was living in Edinburgh, Scotland. And when the pandemic hit, I came back to Australia, back home. And I was like, okay, now what? Because I'd uprooted my life and go, so what do I do now?
Literally the other side of the planet.
So, and it was quite jolting, but I was like, okay, I've got more time, I'm going to do this. And I did that for a year. I worked really hard, had a lot of production. And recently, in the last 3 months, I got a part-time job, more so I can be like, hello, world and people, what is happening out there? But in the same thing, Elise, when you have that outside job, once you know what you're doing, it's not as draining, I want to say, but especially when you've got a new task, you're learning new things, it's a new dynamics, it takes a lot out of you. So it's very difficult to juggle that as well. So it's really, really fantastic to hear that you are taking the time with this book and that you're both in agreement that, you know, what's happening in the pandemic is real. And then the things, because I know a lot of authors are really hard on themselves, saying these are the results I want, why isn't this happening? And you do have to come to a point where you have to accept this is what it is, this is reality, and you need to be kind to yourself as well.
It's one of the reasons, actually, this is a small tangent, but I dislike the term writer's block because I think it is a description of symptoms rather than anything that tells you the cause. And so, you know, sometimes the block is, I am being kind of lazy. I'd just rather sit here and play a video game or something. And then, you know, the solution is apply the whip to your own back and you know, get yourself moving. But sometimes the problem is I'm coming down with a cold, and sometimes the problem is like I have undiagnosed depression, and sometimes the problem is I'm just really stressed by everything in my life. And so that whole, you know, just like apply the whip to your own back and get moving can be massively counterproductive if you do that in the wrong situation. So I don't like the term. I think you need to look at, is it I haven't figured out my plot well enough and I need to stop and think.
Or I've been thinking about my plot and I don't have the resources available to me right now to be able to work it out. You know, I need to talk to somebody else, or you know.
So many problems could lead to I have trouble writing. And you need to figure out what those are, because burnout is going to be a very different thing from, oh, actually I should go back 3 chapters and change what I was doing.
I am a little bit curious. So this is a bit of a nerdy question, but I'm a nerd and you guys are gamers and you guys love anime. All nerds, and I don't care what you say. But this stuff makes me excited because I want to know whether you think that gaming and sort of watching anime or having those inspirations, I'm going to say, do you think that it has kind of enlightened your type of writing or your style? Like it's helped you with characterization and things like that?
Oh, yeah. I would say some of the ways that, particularly for me, running games has been really useful is there's a difference in mindset when you're running a game versus when you're playing a game. And for example, one of the games that I was a co-runner in early in Marie's and my friendship was a Changeling live action role-playing game, where we had about roughly 50 players per game. And like at our largest game, I think we had like over 100. And it went on for about 5 years or so.
Which, by the way, is absurd for Changeling. That's not how it normally works.
Both in numbers and in time. And one of the things that really got me thinking about was the kind of multiplicity of stories and the kind of factionalization, the way that you could, not necessarily have, heroes and villains, but different people with different agendas, all of whom kind of like are invested in and feel that their story or their agenda is the thing that needs to happen, and the way that those can come into conflict. And I feel like, translating that to fiction, you get a much richer, more realistic kind of representation of how the world works, as opposed to, a scenery crunching villain and some stalwart heroes. You've got people with like different needs and different agendas or different understandings of what is important and how the world works coming into conflict. And I feel like that drives a much more interesting story. And I, learned how to manage that by managing 50 players, all of whom wanted a different thing.
I will say, actually, the Changeling LARP was also very much on my mind. It gave me sort of a concept of narrative space, is the way that I think of it. And it's essentially setting things up such that you have a framework of characters and factions and so forth that like will create story within them, right? And this actually, I thought about it very consciously when I was writing Midnight Never Come, the first of the Onyx Court books. Early on in that, because I knew I wanted to do a very political story, I spent some time thinking about different factions and like who are the enemies of the Onyx Court and so forth. And it meant that late in the drafting of that book, when I went, okay, I need something big to cause some kind of distraction here so this other thing can happen. Instead of feeling like I had to gin up some reason for that to happen, I just looked and went, okay, that thing there, it's already set up, it's already there. When I need a thing to happen, all I have to do is tap that to make it go. And so, yeah, narrative space is how I think of that, that it's creating a framework in which you can just have it generate narrative rather than feeling like you're having to like really haul to make something happen. Yeah. The flip side to it, and I'll go ahead and use the Changeling example here, since I played in that LARP. And if you read my novellas, Cold Forged Flame and Lightning in the Blood, that might be my character from that LARP. Because I think when you're playing in a game, the only thing you control then is your character. Your character is the lens through which you see everything. Your character is the lever you push on to make stuff go. And so anything you want to have happen in the story, you've got to figure out how to work within that character to get it to happen. And I think that's why of the things that I've done where something from a game has ended up being adapted into fiction, a lot of it has been character driven. We said that already with the Rook and Rose books, that it was the characters and their dynamics in that arc that we wanted to kind of redo as a novel.
And I think it's been
so intensely into that.
And I think it's been an interesting like the transition we had to make from the game version of this story to our collaboration on the novel. One of the things we had to do was, Ren, the main character, was Marie's character. And so, as the GM, I was always kind of thinking in terms of how to make an interesting story for her, but I wasn't necessarily thinking of her psychology. That was Marie's job. Sorry. And then, but I was thinking about all of the like NPCs, the non-player characters that Ren interacted with. So people like Vargo Gray, Juna, Denaya, like these people that she was building these relationships with. And so when we moved to, and then I was also thinking in terms of what are the plots and challenges that she's coming up against. So when we moved to writing the novel and plotting the novel, like we kind of had to open up that space so that Marie had as much investment control and say in like the plot and the NPCs and everything like that. And also I had to get more comfortable with kind of Ren's psychology.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part we managed that. I think still like when we're kind of writing something where it's deep in Ren's kind of mindset, inner monologue, then that's something Marie will take on because she naturally kind of thinks in those terms more, whereas like whereas if it's somebody like Vargo or Gray or Tess or somebody, then I like, especially I think Vargo, Tess, maybe a couple other characters are the ones that I tend to do the interiority a bit more, just because I've spent more time in their brains.
And it helped that with characters like Denaya and Juna, they actually got like renamed and changed significantly from their game versions, and so that helped. That it was okay, it's not just that NPC Alyc made up, it's we have made a new person to occupy kind of the same position in the story, but they need a lot of changes because we've changed the world, we've changed the plot, we've changed practically everything. Since you mentioned anime and such, I will say that I think there's a danger sometimes that I see with writers where I can tell if they've watched a lot of movies, TV, AV media, because they try to write like what they've seen on the screen. And they're different media. You've got to write them differently. Like I've read books where you get these like incredibly choppy one paragraph scenes. And I'm like, that's not a scene, that's the camera cut to showing this other thing, and now you want to cut back here. You're not writing a movie. You've got to write a novel.
And I think similarly, the challenge of writing, my D&D campaign as a novel is it used to be like the 5-party adventurer kind of issue. Now I think for me it comes out more as seeing the dice roll on the page. And I know there's like genres of books where
lit
like,
RPG,
like lit RPG, where that's actually a benefit. People want to see that, but I think in a lot of more I guess like traditional fantasy, for me, that like I don't want to feel like I'm seeing the mechanics of the magic system, for example. I don't want to feel like I could take it from the book and immediately run a game off of it and know that that's fireball and it does 12d6 damage or something.
Yeah, when I was in graduate school, I actually wrote a paper on the evolution of the Drow, the Dark Elves, in the Forgotten Realms over like the textual history of D&D and the novels written for the Forgotten Realms. And as part of that, I read a 6-book series called The War of the Spider Queen. And God, I feel bad for the authors who are collaborating on that, specifically the one who had to write the book from the point of view of the wizard character, because watching him try to talk around the concept of spell slots in a narratively coherent fashion, I'm just like, the artificiality of that concept was so painfully obvious, and yet he couldn't get around it because that's what he had to work with. It's like, God, I feel for you, dude. I would not have wanted to do that.
And it's funny because I've actually started like thinking and referring to the magic in our world, our novels, less as magic systems, because I feel like that kind of harkens to that dice on the page, and more as esoteric frameworks, which is much more how like real world magic happens. So, like tarot isn't a magic system, it's an esoteric framework, and there's a lot of metaphor that goes into that. Sacred geometry is an esoteric framework that there's a lot of kind of very ambiguous multiple layers of understanding that go into everything that like the magic that you do out of that. And so I'm trying to kind of like make that shift, because I think that's a more interesting way to talk about how we do magic in our world.
I've been getting increasingly allergic to the phrase magic system, because it leads people to talk about how, there must be rules and things have to have a cost. And after a while, it starts seeming incredibly mechanical to me and not like real world beliefs about magic, which is what I'm personally more interested in. It's not that you can't write something cool with a very, very mechanized system, but it's just not what I want to do.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I love you guys. I love your brains. I love it. What would you say your most memorable reader interaction moment has been?
So I had one recently, and this is really ridiculous, but we do kind of go and stealth watch like sometimes reviews and stuff like that. And there was a reviewer recently who posted a YouTube video, and she pronounced my name right. And like there's like even a tiny little cut where you could tell she was like she was like, it's by M.A. Carrick, who's a combination of Marie, Brennan, and tiny little cut Alyc Helms. And I was like, thank you so much. I love you so much.
Yeah, there's a reason I write under a pen name. Like this is not secret. It's like on Wikipedia. My legal last name is Neuenschwander. That was never going to happen, and I knew it at the age of 9. But we've actually set up something recently that's given us a really great opportunity for the reader interactions, because actually, especially for the M.A. Carrick stuff, our first book came out in the middle of a pandemic. We have not been able to have we go to cons, we do a bookstore event kind of interactions nearly as much. But we just set up a Discord server, both for our joint work as M.A. Carrick, but then also we've got channels for my books and for Alyc's books. And actually, I may eventually set up a channel there for my patrons for my Patreon. But that's been really great, because it's been nice to feel like we've got a community space for our readers. We both have blogs, like we're on Twitter and such, but that's much more, we talk to people, especially the blogs, right? It's, we say a thing and then people comment. And Twitter is, fun for some things, but it's got its problems. So having a place that feels like it's sort of the, community hangout room for our readers has been really nice.
And we've got a lot of smart readers. So there have been some amazing conversations going on there about like, I don't know, like Swedish education systems. And what are some of the other?
Because we've got actually
a lot of international readers.
So we've got readers in Switzerland and, all kinds of places.
Poland, Germany, Australia.
But anyway, so I will say, if anybody wants to join the Discord server, ping us on Twitter or email us, just because annoyingly, even though the Discord links we generate should be good for a week and should be good for unlimited uses, they seem to become invalid after like a day. So if you're interested, ping us. We will happily hook you up with the link.
I want a link.
We have a channel for
We will
cat
send it to you.
pictures.
Yes, there is the daily Thrace because Alyssa's cat Thrace sadly will not video bomb this because Alyssa's actually sitting down in my den while we film this. But Alyssa has a great cat named Thrace.
Yeah, and so we encourage other people to post their great pets as well.
Yeah.
I would love to know then, what is your top 3 tips for authors who are watching right now?
General tips, or because when in your email you initially said marketing tips?
Marketing tips, but it can be, I'm like, you know what, I feel like this interview, we can talk about anything. So whatever your top 3 tips are.
I think we're a lot better at talking general tips than marketing ones, because honestly, I will say up front, I'm not great at the marketing thing. It is not my strong point, never has been. And it's also a bit different depending on whether you're talking about indie publishing or traditional publishing, right? On the indie side of things, part of the reason, I mean, I put some books out as self-published, mostly so that I can have like short story collections out there. I don't do a lot to try to drive them because I look at that stuff and I get exhausted. But on the trad pub side, the main thing that I would say is that fundamentally, although we really want to believe it's otherwise, the marketing stuff that the author can do doesn't change that much. It can help, but it's not like, oh God, if you don't do all of these things, then your book will be a failure and it's your fault. They did a study a long time ago, and I have every reason to believe that this is still true. The number one reason that people buy a book is because they've read a book by that author before and enjoyed it. The number 2 reason that people buy a book is because a friend of theirs said, ooh, I think you'll like this. And everything else, cover, professional reviews, casual reviews, any of those other things, ads, those are a distant third to those 2 things. So word of mouth is the single biggest thing that, and we can't control that, right? We can encourage people, hey, if you liked it, tell your friends.
Tell your friends about the book. But
so it's not that there's no point in doing marketing yourself, of like being on social media, doing interviews like this one and so forth. But the tip I would give people is do the parts you enjoy. And don't kick yourself for not doing the things that you hate, the things that drain the energy out of you so that then you don't even have any will to go write the next book. Because that is the one thing that's in your control, is write another book. Yeah. Getting more material out there helps your career. So do the marketing you enjoy, don't sweat the rest of it, and go write your next book. Here endeth my TED Talk.
It was a good TED Talk.
Yeah.
I love it. And Elise, what would be your 3 top tips?
I mean, she stole mine.
Yeah, we're very much in agreement on this stuff.
Yeah,
so.
it's the, like, there's so much of the whole process that you cannot control, from what is popular right now to are readers going to be talking about you to, is it like, are agents accepting a particular thing that, like, so much out of your control. All you can really do is get button share and, like, try to get the words down, and don't kick yourself if you don't, get as many words down as you wanted to. Like, 200 words a day is, better than no words a day, kind of a thing. And it is hard at every level, but hopefully if you can find the place where you take joy out of it, then, like, don't kick yourself for the rest.
And I think that's good writing advice in general, that you've got to find joy in it somewhere. Like, some people hate doing the first draft and they enjoy the revisions. Some people hate revisions, but the first draft is fun for them, whatever it is. But this is a long process. It requires a lot of endurance, and you've got to figure out how to keep some joy in it. On the process level, what Alyssa said about, 200 words a day, if that's what you're able to get done, then cool. A lot of it is find the process that works for you. Yeah. Don't think, oh, well, but this other person does thus and such, and they're really successful, so I got to do it like them. Find the way that works for you. This actually, we sort of touched on this briefly at the beginning in talking about collaborating. It's hard to collaborate with someone whose process is wildly different from yours, because you're just going to be butting heads at every turn going, well, but I need an outline. And the other person's saying, well, if I have an outline, it kills my enjoyment. Like, how do you reconcile that, right? So figure out what process works for you and go with it.
And also, if it starts not working on like a longer term level, like, change it up, like, find a new way. I know for a long time, I was a very early morning writer. And for reasons that has, like, especially in collaboration with Marie, that has not actually been
we had to meet in the middle
feasible.
Because Alyssa has been a morning lark. I am a dyed-in-the-wool congenital night owl. And so we write in the afternoon, which is not preferred for either of us.
And we mostly write in a shared Google Doc, but like if I will sometimes go off if I'm struggling, and I'll write something by hand because that's how I do my own personal writing, because it just works for me.
Yeah.
And then I will go and I will transcribe it.
Yeah. But yeah, your process can change.
Later.
Yeah. Your process can change over time. And so, be alert to that and don't think, well, but this is how I've always done it. If you feel like you need to try something new, go for it.
This is my favorite question to ask. What is the goal that you're chasing? What is the dream that you're after for your writing career?
I mean, I think for me, it's similar to what I imagine is true for a lot of people who love writing, which is I'd love to be doing this full time. Like I'd love to have this be my self-supporting thing. So, actually, however I can get to that would be great.
I have actually talked with people, though. There are some writers who, for very good reasons, say, it's actually not my dream to have writing be my full-time job. And for good reason, because I am a full-time writer. When it's your only job, there's a level of like pressure that isn't there when it's something that you're putting into the corners around a day job. And so it brings some stress that for some people honestly kills it. Like I know people for whom their dream is actually to have a nice, easy part-time job that they can like go out to and talk to people other than the imaginary ones in their head, and that they can, get some amount of financial support from, so it's not all on the books. And so, that's actually really fair to say, maybe full-time writer is not the best route for everybody. We want to talk pie in the sky dreams, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, call us. We actually genuinely, I mean, it would be nice to get on that, sweet TV movie money train. But of all the things that I have worked on, I genuinely think this is our most sort of like suited to TV adaptation. It's got the sumptuous clothing. It's got the pretty people all lying to each other, like
it's got the dynamic intrigue kind of, relate like just really nitty gritty, cool relationships.
And at its heart, it's still really character driven. It is so much about the characters and their interactions with each other and who trusts whom and whether they're right to do it. Like, I honestly, like with all sort of caveats aside, think that this could make a really fantastic series. So there's the pie in the sky dream.
Yes.
Yes, I love that. I'll put a disclaimer down. To whom it may concern at Net. Please. Now, I do have a segment called Speed Dating with an Author. So we're all going to nice speed date. I lit a candle. I've created ambience. But basically what it is 5 rapid questions. Are you ready?
Yes.
I'm ready.
What is the clumsiest moment you've ever had?
I'm lucky to be alive. I tripped and fell on a set of concrete stairs, and the worst that I did to myself was I split my knee open. I've had other clumsy moments, but that might be the one that scares the crap out of me the most.
Like you fell down the whole stairs, like the whole flight?
Fortunately, it was only a half flight, but it was concrete. Like
just a half flight.
Yeah, it could have been very bad.
Mine won't like make you go, ah. So I was a Highland dancer for many years out at Renaissance fairs, and I was doing a show one time. I was doing the Highland jig, which is a very energetic dance, and I got off on my footing, like I got on the wrong foot. And at the very end of the dance, you do this like thing where you kick up one leg, kick up the other, and then you do these kips, and then you end in your pose. And I kicked up the leg that I was on, but I also kicked up the leg that I should have been on, and I ended up kicking up both legs at the same time and landing on my butt in the middle of like the stage in front of a crowd of 100 people or so. And then I went, ha ha, and everybody clapped.
That's what you do when that happens. I did it on purpose.
What are the 3 words that you would best describe yourself with?
Foxes, tea, and squee.
Squee.
Squee. As in squee. I am a very enthusiastic person.
Yeah.
I love
that. One of mine I couldn't put into a better word than kinetics, because ballet and karate and fight scenes didn't all fit into a single word. So kinetics, cats, and research.
Okay. What is your life motto?
So this is actually from a matching game I play when I'm bored, which is, and I'll sometimes get very invested on like trying to clean up the obstacles and not actually like pay attention to how many moves I have. So my motto has become don't mistake the obstacle for the goal. which I think is very profound from a
That's
matching
really
game.
deep. Mine's not deep at all.
Deep. That's a hard one to follow up on, Marie.
Yeah, no, mine's not deep at all. It comes with a caveat, which is that, insert all the things I might say about Orson Scott Card here, but I may have mentioned that I'm a night owl, and Ender's Game has the line, early to bed and early to rise makes a man stupid and blind in the eyes, which I'm like, yeah, not healthy, wealthy, and wise. Nope, that is not me.
What is the song that would best describe you?
I listen to a lot of instrumental music, and a lot of the rest of it is in foreign languages I don't speak, so I don't got a good answer to this one.
And for me, pulling off of the Squeak answer, there's a parody of Icona Pop's I Love It called I Ship It by Not Literally. And I would say that for me, I Ship It is definitely me in a song.
I regret that I did not keep an actual literal list of everybody in our own series that Alyc has shipped. But I mean, if they're not nailed down, and even if they are, Alyc is kind of going, maybe these two, all of these two, yes.
There are a couple Ace Aero people that I do not ship.
Yeah,
but it's because I'm like, I can't imagine them with somebody else because they're Ace Aero. So
yeah, no, but I mean, Juna, I think you've shipped with practically every unattached character in the series at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, this is going to really put you on the spot. If there was a sort of theme song or a tone for your book, what would it be?
Oh, this one we can do.
We actually have this answer.
Yes. There's a musical called The Scarlet Pimpernel with a song called The Riddle. That song, that's our trilogy. Go listen to it.
Yep.
Amazing. Wow, I wasn't expecting that, but that's awesome. Okay, what is a unique talent or skill set that you have that not a lot of people know about?
So I don't know if it's like, I mean, I don't really make this secret, but I know if like, people are like, oh, you're a writer, don't really think about other things. I also do and have done for a long time costuming for historical recreation and theater costuming. And so actually a lot of that comes in the book. As I said earlier, I'm not Tess, but
you're kind of Tess.
Yeah.
For
Tess
me,
is our seamstress character.
Yeah.
In the book.
Since I mentioned the ballet and karate, I did ballet for 13 years growing up. I've been doing karate for about 13 years now. That's why I said yes. I have a black belt in Shonin-ryu karate, so just the movement stuff. That's why I put kinetics as one of my 3 words. I didn't have a better way to sum up the whole body's moving for things.
So all I'm hearing is don't mess with Marie.
Do not, there is a literal sword collection just upstairs. Right.
I used to do fencing.
I don't think you haven't done.
Yes, but
so what is coming up? What do we need to be on the lookout for, and where do we find you, or should I say, where do we stalk you?
Well, so we've got both our joint website and such. So there's macarrick.com, and then on Twitter we are ma_Carrick. And then similarly, I have a website, swantower.com, and on Twitter I am swan_tower, because without the underscore was already taken.
And I am Alyc Helms everywhere, my website, Twitter, etc. Also, we don't have an MA Carrick Instagram, but I post a lot of MA Carrick stuff on my Instagram. So Alyc Helms on Instagram if you're there.
We've also got the Discord that we mentioned, though we can't provide a link here anyway. So just, ping us on Twitter, or there's a contact form on our website. You can get in touch to get the Discord link. Yeah. And as for what's coming up, we mentioned The Liar's Knot is out December 7th for US people, December 9th for the UK sphere of publication. So you've only got to wait 2 extra days.
And then we are finishing up the 3rd book, which does not have an official title yet. Yeah. And that'll be coming out probably
2023. It's actually
like
not
early 2023.
Yeah.
So you'll have to wait a year and like a month or 2 between.
But we gave you the 2nd book after less than a year, so it evens out.
Yeah.
No complaints, readers. I don't want to hear it.
We're gonna get so many complaints when people hit the end of the 2nd book and realize they have to wait.
They have to wait a year.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so excited to get my hands on the Mask of Mirrors. Like I'm so excited for it. And I'll drop the link below too, so everyone else, we can go on a good old reading binge together, and not long until we have to wait for the 2nd book. So thank you so much for coming on today. I've had an absolute blast.
Thank you so much for having us. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to love you and leave you, but who knows? Watch this space, and maybe next year we'll be able to get you back on.
Absolutely.
That'd be good.
Bye, guys.
Bye.